We are explaining Daniel 11 verse by verse. Daniel 11 is the prophecy for the time of the end. It says so in the 11:12 vision. Now, we've already covered up to verse 23, so we'll start in 23, give a little recap, and take a run at the next section of Daniel 11. In Daniel 2 and 7, you have the series of kingdoms. We were just studying Daniel 11 section on Rome. We are now moving from the time of Rome to the time of the divided Roman Empire with the little horn. And in Daniel 11, 23 and 24, we have the rise of the papacy. It says, and after the league is made with him, he shall act deceitfully. Well, Constantine comes on the scene, and he unites pagan and Christianity, and he makes something that eventually becomes the Holy Roman Empire as he mixes church and state, paganism and Christianity. His coin even as much as admits to it that we have here. And it goes on in verse 23, for he shall come up and become strong with a small number of people. At the time of that unity with Constantine the Great, Christianity covered about 20% of the kingdom, paganism about 80%. And if you were to go to the Vatican, you'd find a very small country, 120 acres, but it is very powerful, as described in the text. It goes on in verse 24 and says, he shall enter peaceably even into the richest places of the province, and he shall do what his fathers have not done, nor his forefathers. He shall disperse among them the plunder, the spoil, the riches, and he shall devise his plans against the strongholds, but only for a time. So he's only in power for a time. I have another segment in this series called The Times of Daniel 11 and 12 that go into the time prophecies and tie them together. But here it is a reference to the 1260 days that the papacy is in power. Only for a time. You have in Daniel 11:24, it's for a time. Daniel 12:7, it's the times, time, and half a time. And Daniel 7:25, it's the times, time, and half a time. In Revelation, we have it too. Here it is in Revelation. But the woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness to her place, where she is nourished for a time, times, and half a time. Also, then the woman fled into the wilderness, where she is a place prepared by God, that they should feed her there 1,260 days. Well, time, times, and a half a time is 1 year, 2 years, and half a time. And 3.5 years is 1,260 days. He, the beast, was given authority to continue for 42 months, which is 1,260 days again. When you take a look at this as a day for a year in Bible prophecy, you have 1,260 years, and that matches the papal supremacy. Vigilus ascends the papal chair in 538 under the military protection of Justinian's general Belisarius. So in 538, the papacy takes its position with church and state power. Justinian issued a decree in 533 that said the Pope was the leader of all Christianity in the Roman Empire. Except the Pope, the Bishop of Rome, wasn't welcome in Rome in 533. He'd been kicked out of Rome by some Arian Christians who had control of Rome at the moment. And so we have him coming back in with military protection in 538. 1,260 years later, the Pope is taken captive by Napoleon's general Berthier. In 1798, he, Berthier, made his entrance into Rome, abolished the papal government, and established a secular one. So the papacy had a 1,260-year time of supremacy. It would be in power, but only for a time. It is interesting that if you look at Revelation, there are also time prophecies for Islam. Arab Islam, the Arab caliphates, had what the Bible called 5 months, day for a year, that's 150 years, and they were in power for 150 years. Then Turkish Islam rises, 391 years and 15 days. A guy by the name of Josiah Lich predicted the fall of the Turkish Ottoman Empire in for August 11, 1840. And on that date, in events that happened in Turkey, Lebanon, and Egypt, the Ottoman Empire fell. Now, Josiah Litch, to predict that date, did something very interesting. He talked about the 5 months as Arab Islam, but the 5 months appears twice. And he said the first one is for Arab Islam, the second one was for the rise of the Ottoman Empire during their rising time. And then they become strong and last till 1840. And his calculations ended up working out and being fulfilled in history. Let's take a look at the role of the King of the North versus the King of the South in the divided Roman Empire time, which is papal-led Christianity versus Islam. It says, "He shall stir up his power and his courage against the king of the south with a great army. And the king of the south shall be stirred up to battle with a very great and mighty army. But he shall not stand, for they shall devise plans against him." So, what power follows Rome? Just remember that historically Rome splits just like Greece did into a north and a south. When the Greek Empire split, there were 4 divisions, but Daniel only cared about 2 in chapter 11, the north and the south, and God's people in Jerusalem got caught in the middle. Well, in the Roman Empire, we have the same thing. The Roman Empire splits into multiple pieces, and then he cares about 2. You get Christian north, Islam south. Islam struck in the 600s from the south. 4 armies swept up through Israel from the Arabian Peninsula, and they take that territory from the south, and then later the Christians strike back with the Crusades from the north, setting up the divided Roman Empire conflict between a north and a south that will last all the way till God sets up his kingdom. So let's take a look at what it says. "Yes, those who eat the portion of his delicacies shall destroy him. His army shall be swept away, and many shall fall down slain. But these kings' hearts shall be bent on evil. They shall speak lies at the same table, but it shall not prosper, for the end will still be at the appointed time." During the Crusades, both the papal crusaders and the Muslim jihadists, they spoke lies at the same table. They would make treaties, they would break them. They were just back and forth. It was lots of trickery, deceit. And which one of them was good? It's very clear. They're both evil. So when people ask me, "Tim, which is the good one, the king of the north or the king of the south?" Well, no, neither of them's good. We've got to remember that God is laying out a power that shows that neither is good. "And while returning to his own land with great riches, his heart shall be moved against the holy covenant." This is really important. "So he shall do damage and return to his own land." So what we're going to have is a pattern. We're going to have it 3 times. The king of the north is going to get hit by the king of the south. He's going to push back, and then he's going to return home, or at the end of the conflict with the king of the south, he will attack the covenant. And the only way you can really attack the covenant is to attack God's covenant-keeping people who are following God's covenant. So in each conflict, the king of the north attacks the covenant or God's covenant-keeping people. Now, how can he do that? Well, he can change times and laws, God's covenant. Daniel makes it clear in chapter 11 that he's against the covenant. Daniel 7 said he shall intend to change times and law. And the papacy, the Catholic Church, says, yeah, the Pope can do that. The Pope is so great of authority and power that he can modify, change, or interpret even divine laws. The Pope can modify divine law since his power is not of man, but of God, and he acts as vicegerent of God upon the earth with most ample power of binding and loosing his sheep. Francis was talking about same-sex unions even. But does the papacy actually think they can change God's law? Well, you go to a convert's catechism, it says, which day is the Sabbath? Answer, Saturday's the Sabbath day. Question, why do we observe Sunday instead of Saturday? We observe Sunday instead of Saturday because the Catholic Church transferred the solemnity from Saturday to Sunday. Oh, so they claim they changed God's law. By the way, that's why I'm a Sabbath-keeping Christian today. I just can't go along with the King of the North, beast power of Revelation and Daniel 11. In Daniel 11, 29 to 39, we have the second conflict with Islam. It's during the Islamic Ottoman Empire and the Reformation. And it says, "At the appointed time he shall return and go towards the south, but it shall not be like the former or the latter." So let's take a look at this. This actually shows us three conflicts that are going on between the King of the North and the King of the South. You had the former one, number one, down towards the bottom, and that former one is the Crusades. The second one, at an appointed time, is the Ottoman Empire, and later we're going to take a look at time prophecies that actually lock that in as the Ottoman Empire. And number three, you have the latter, the time of the end. Now the thing about the Hebrew here is that you have the same King of the North and the same King of the South in all three. Notice, at the appointed time he shall return. It's not a new King of the North, it's not a new King of the South. They're going back into a second round of conflict. And there's going to be a third one. So, whatever you decide is the King of the North and the King of the South, you've got to understand that it's got to be the same in all three. And many different interpretations miss this simple fact that there are three conflicts, same North, same South, in all three of them. And we're laying out that we have the papacy as the King of the North and Islam as the King of the South. And this will become very, very important as we get to the end of this prophecy in the time of the end, because then is when it becomes very important to us. In Revelation, we have a parallel. One woe is past, behold, still two more woes are coming after these things. So we have three woes in Revelation, three conflicts in Daniel. The first two woes in Revelation are clearly Islam versus Christianity. It was understood that way for centuries. But the three conflicts in Daniel 11, of the third one, it's clearly the same powers. Revelation in the third woe isn't so specific. It's kind of vague. But in Daniel 11, it's very clear that we still have the same powers involved. Patrick Buchanan, not looking at Bible prophecy, also admits that there's three conflicts. As for a climatic conflict between a once Christian West and an Islamic world that is growing in numbers and advancing inexorably into Europe for the third time in 14 centuries. Did you catch that? He's looking at this and he realizes it is the third conflict that's brewing right now. Three conflicts. In Daniel, there are only three. And if we are living in the third one, folks, this is the third and final conflict. We're almost done. That should be some good news. Why did God allow these Muslim invasions or Islamic invasions into the Christian world? Well, actually in Revelation chapter 9, talking about the woes, it tells us why. But the rest of mankind who were not killed by these plagues did not repent of the works of their hands, that they should not worship demons and idols of gold, silver, brass, stone, and wood, which can neither see nor hear nor walk. And they did not repent of their murders or their sorceries or their sexual immorality or their thefts. So if you look what happens in early Christianity, they start erecting images and bowing down to them in the churches. Well, if you think back to Old Testament Israel, what happened if they started setting up images and bowing down to them? Did they gain or lose protection from God? Obviously, they lost it. And so you can expect that for New Testament Christianity, once they start worshiping images, they're going to lose God's protection. And in come the Muslims. And what does Muhammad and the Muslims especially hate? Image worship. Isn't that interesting? God allows the invasions because of image worship, and the invaders hate images. And on top of that, the church started ruling out the use of the Bible and started placing traditions over the Bible. And because of that, people's lives were no longer in harmony, and there was immorality, and there was all kinds of horrible stuff going on within Christianity. And so God sent Islam in as a discipline. But God used it for good. Here we have a map showing the spread of Islam, and it had risen in Mecca and Medina, and then the Turks had joined in with Islam, and it's now pushing up into Europe. How is there good news in this? Well, you go up north in the Germanic tribes sections up there, and you are going to find a monk by the name of Martin Luther. He nails the 95 Theses to the Wittenberg chapel door, and the Reformation kicks into high gear. And the Pope wants to go up there and destroy Martin Luther. What keeps the Pope from destroying Martin Luther? It's the push of Islam from the south. Every time the Pope thinks he's got enough people to go send an army up to get rid of Martin Luther, because remember, it takes an army to get Martin Luther because the German princes were protecting him. And so he'd have to get an army together, but oh, here come the Turks again, got to send the army down and got to get those German guys to come help us fight the Turks. And you get the battle done with the Turks, and then you think about getting Luther, no, here comes the Turks again. And Martin Luther watched a couple of rounds of this, and he said that his greatest defender was the Sultan of Turkey. He realized, and what is God doing? Because of the push of Islam, the Pope couldn't take out Martin Luther, and the Reformation gets out of control for the church. And righteousness by faith in the Bible in common languages are back available again. That was good news. God used Islam for good. But it had told us in verses 29 that the king of the north is going to return and head south, but it wouldn't be like the first or the latter. In the first conflict, the Crusades, the papacy had control of Jerusalem for a long time. The second one, it wouldn't. Why? Because for ships from Cyprus shall come against him. Therefore he shall be grieved and return in rage against the holy covenant and do damage. So he shall return and shall regard for those who forsake the holy covenant. All right. So what do we have? Well, right here on this map on the wall behind me, we have Israel's right here. Here's the Mediterranean, and here's the island of Cyprus. Well, the Turks wanted Cyprus. And so they get a fleet together of 300 ships. They send the ships down here. They attack Cyprus, drop 15,000 soldiers off to finish off Cyprus, and the fleet heads west. Meanwhile, up here, the Pope is saying, hey, I don't want to lose Cyprus. That's our stopping off spot on the way to Jerusalem. So he gets his fleet of 300 plus ships, and they set sail, and their goal is to sail to Cyprus, save Cyprus, and then go get Jerusalem. That's what they're supposed to do. But the Muslim fleet, remember, the prophecy said they'd be coming from where? Cyprus. They left Cyprus, and the two fleets meet right in here in the Battle of Lepanto in 1571. And the Muslim fleet was decimated, the Christian fleet victorious, but the Christian fleet was so badly damaged that it turned around and went back home without gaining Cyprus or Jerusalem. Well, in the Vatican, they put up a huge painting celebrating the Battle of Lepanto. Obviously, the Muslims are on the right, the Christians are on the left. And this was the ships lined up to go into battle. Very stylized painting. But this painting was put up in 1572. Now remember, Daniel says he's going to head south, he's going to be stopped by ships from Cyprus, and return home in rage against the covenant. So here's the first part, the ships from Cyprus. The second part, beside it, there were supposed to be paintings of the saving Cyprus and recapture of Jerusalem. They didn't happen, and so what went up the next year in 1572 were two paintings, this is one of them, of the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre when 70,000 plus Huguenots, which were French Christians who were following the Bible instead of the traditions of the church, covenant keepers, if you will. They go and they killed 70,000 of them, and they take those spaces for Cyprus and Jerusalem, and they put these paintings up celebrating the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre. Now I want you to understand, he heads south, is stopped by ships from Cyprus, returns home in a rage against the covenant, and 70,000 people are killed. You can go to the walls of the Vatican and you can watch the fulfillment of Daniel 11 in the paintings. There's always a place that is literal, and there's also a people. Now, let's go to Daniel 11:31. We have a disjunctive here. What is a disjunctive? A vav disjunctive is when there is a break in the story. So you had a story of the Battle of Lepanto and the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre, and then there's a break. It indicates a break or a change. And it says, and forces shall be mustered by him, the king of the north, the papacy, and they shall defile the sanctuary fortress, then they shall take away the daily sacrifices and place there the abomination of desolation. So what we have here is a second abomination in Daniel. The first one was the fall of Jerusalem in 927. Now we have a second one. One is for the place and the other is for the people. And up through Daniel 11:30, it's almost entirely about the place. Now, in verse 31 and following, it's largely about the people. It takes a second look. And in Daniel 9:19, it says, your city and your people who are called by your name. Always have a place and a people. Jesus, thinking about that first abomination of desolation, therefore when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place, whoever reads, let him understand, then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. There's your first abomination of desolation, and you have the destruction of Jerusalem. But then he says, for then there shall be great tribulation, such as not been since the beginning of the world until this time, nor ever shall be. And unless those days were shortened, no flesh would be saved, but for the elect's sake, those days will be shortened. Jesus now gives a global application, which actually would be from the abomination of desolation, and in Daniel 11, verse 31. And so Jesus said he's doing it from the Daniel's abomination of desolation, and he's got both of them. It continues in Daniel 11:32. Those who do wickedly against the covenant he shall corrupt with flattery. But the people who know their God shall be strong. I want you to notice this is about the people now. And they will carry out great exploits. And those of the people who understand shall instruct many. Yet for many days they shall fall by sword and flame, by captivity and plundering. And it's during the time of the papal power that they were burning people at the stake. Heretics. What's a heretic? Somebody who follows the Bible instead of the traditions of the church. And for that, they were killed by sword or by flame. That's why so many people ended up fleeing the old world and coming to the new world. And that's not just my imagination. You can read Fox's Book of Martyrs. You can even listen to Pope John Paul II, who urged forgiveness for centuries of wrong. The Pope says the Roman Catholic Church must mark the year 2000 by acknowledging its members' sins, including intolerance in the name of religion and complicity in human rights crimes. As the second millennium draws to a close, the Church should become more fully conscious of the sinfulness of her children, recalling all those times in history when they departed from the Spirit of Christ. because of all the persecution that has happened within Christianity and Islam, there are a tremendous amount of people in the world today that don't want anything to do with religion. I was at Speaker's Corner in London, and Hyde Park technically, and you can go to the Speaker's Corner and you can say anything you want to say. And you have Christians and you have Muslims out there, and they're trying to convince everybody that they're right and the other side's wrong. And there's also politicians out there. There's all kinds of stuff going on. But especially Christians and Muslims get together to debate every Sunday at Speaker's Corner. And I went out there and watched. And I was very fortunate that day. I got to see both Jay Smith and David Wood in action, some Christian apologists that do a really good job. And I was watching and seeing how they do things. And I saw a lady with a table full of books. They're actually advertising a free Great Controversy book, a book about prophecy and history that was off to the side. And I walked over to see what she had at her table. And there was an atheist there. And he was yelling at her. And that's appropriate or acceptable. I don't know if it's appropriate, but it's acceptable at Speaker's Corner. She's set up there. You've got to be ready for anything that comes. And he was yelling at her, and I walked over, and I was standing just to the west of him, providentially. And while he's yelling, he decided to go after Americans too. I had not said a word yet. Nobody knew I was an American. When I speak in England, people can tell I'm an American. He points to the west and he says, "Americans are all liars." Remember, I'm standing to his west. He's pointing at me. And I thought, hey, this is Speaker's Corner. I don't have to take this. I stepped right up in his face and I said, "I'm an American. Are you calling me a liar?" And he started backtracking and physically stepping back a little bit. I said, I understand that you're upset at Christianity, you're upset at Islam. He was attacking both Islam and Christianity. And I said, God doesn't like it either. According to God, there's Christianity and Islam are in conflict, and both sides are doing evil. God doesn't like them either. But in this prophecy, there are some Muslims and some Christians who will come together that truly follow Jesus in the Bible and love people instead of hate them. And after a little bit, he says, "I think I'm just going to leave, and I'm still thinking about this lady he's been yelling at." And I said, "That would be a good idea." And he backed off a few more feet and stopped and started yelling at her again. I stepped right up and talked to him a bit longer. And he said, "I think I'm just going to leave." And this time he left. And I was going to go back and talk to the lady, but I was interrupted by a Muslim who said, "Sir, can you tell me about this Bible prophecy that says that there will be a group of Muslims and a group of Christians that truly love God and follow the Bible and Jesus? I'd like to know more about that." And he and I had a talk. I have met many Muslims who are saying, if Islam is a religion of peace, why so much bloodshed? But if Christianity is so good, why so much bloodshed and trouble there? You see, God's given the answer for our world today. There's a king of the south, a king of the north. Islam and Christianity, they're both evil, but God has a group of people that will come together that truly love Jesus in the Bible. That is a message for our time. And the reality is, Christianity, traditional political Christianity, has done a horrible job of representing Jesus Christ. They act more like the devil than they act like Jesus. The letter goes on to acknowledge things like the Spanish Inquisition, the Crusades, and the martyrs who died through the centuries. Goes on to say, now when they fall, God's people, they shall be aided with a little help. But many shall join with them by intrigue, and some of those who understand shall fall, to refine them, purify them, and make them white. Many were killed at the stake in multiple ways until the time of the end, because it is still for the appointed time. Don't give up. Troubles will happen. Remember, Jesus said there'll be wars and rumors of wars. I believe he was getting this from Daniel chapter 11. But it is still for the end. Jesus said that when the gospel goes to all the world, then the end will come. That's how Daniel 11 ends as well. And so you're going through all these. Hang on. You're going to have to hang on a little while longer. It's still for the appointed time. It's still coming. Then the king, meaning the king of the north, shall do according to his own will. He shall exalt and magnify himself above every god, shall speak blasphemies against the God of gods, and shall prosper till the wrath has been accomplished. For what has been determined shall be done. He shall regard neither the God of his fathers, nor the desire of women, nor regard any god, for he shall exalt himself above them all. Let's take a look at this. Speaking great words or blasphemy. We just read that in Daniel 11. Magnify himself above every god, speaking blasphemies, and neither the desire of fathers or the desire of women. That would be probably the celibacy and the priesthood. She'll speak pompous words about the Most High. Let's take a look at 2 Thessalonians 2:4, where he puts himself in place of God, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped, so that he sits as God in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. You see, the little horn of Daniel 7, the king of the north of Daniel 11, the man of sin of 2 Thessalonians 2, the beast of Revelation 13, they're all one and the same. They're all papal-led Christianity. If you study through them, it's the same characteristics, the same time periods. Everything is the same. But this tells us that he's going to set himself up in the temple as if he were God. And it says he was given a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies. What's blasphemy? Well, Jesus was accused of blasphemy when he claimed to be God, except Jesus was God. Jesus was accused of blasphemy when he claimed he could forgive sin, because only God can forgive sin. But if he is God, he can forgive sins. And I'll tell you, I'm counting on Jesus' ability to be able to forgive sin, because he is God. Now, does the Pope claim these things, to be God or to be able to forgive sin? Yes, we find that claim is there. The Pope is of so great of dignity and so exalted that he is not a mere man, but as it were God, and the vicar of God. The Pope is called most holy because he is rightfully presumed to be such. He is likewise the divine monarch and the supreme emperor and king of kings. That's a title for Jesus. Hence, the Pope is crowned with the triple crown as king of heaven and of earth and of the lower regions. Let's see. He's not only king of the earth, he's king of hell, and he's king of heaven. That means he can tell God what to do? Actually, we're going to see another quote that says they believe they can tell God what to do. The Pope is, as it were, God on earth, sole sovereign of the faithful of Christ, chief king of kings, having plenitude of power. The Pope is not only the representative of Jesus Christ, but he is Jesus Christ himself, hidden under the veil of the flesh. Remember in Thessalonians it said he'd be sitting in the temple as if he were God? Well, here's the Pope. It's Pope Benedict sitting on a throne. It's from Catholic television. You have him sitting between two cherubim. In the Old Testament, the Ark of the Covenant, God's judgment or seat, is between the two cherubim. In Revelation, you have God's throne room and the great white throne, and here's the Pope sitting on the white throne. Also in the throne room, you have 4 living beings around the throne, and on the upper platform of this picture, you see 4 living people. You have the papacy using a combination of illustrations of Old and New Testament and put the Pope on God's throne. So yeah, they actually claim to be God. Rebutting a belief widely shared by Protestants and a growing number of Roman Catholics, Pope John Paul II on Tuesday dismissed the widespread idea that one can obtain forgiveness directly from God and exhorted Catholics to confess more often to their priest. Oh, a growing trend of Roman Catholics that don't do that? I got an email one day from a faculty member of a Roman Catholic university. He'd been on my website, and he said, man, this presentation, number 2 of my 10-part presentation, is really hard to take because it identifies the papacy as the king of the north, the beast power, the little horn. But he had a smiley face beside that. It's really hard to take, smiley face. I thought, what in the world is a smiley face doing there? And I kept reading. He said, but I'm one of those Catholic Christians you talk about that goes straight to Jesus for my forgiveness. He caught the difference between talking about the papacy as a system and God having a people in the system. You see, within the papacy, there are many people who are truly following Jesus to the best of their abilities, the best of their understandings. In Revelation, it says, come out of her, my people. God has a people in there. He says so. So when we talk about the papal system, we are not talking about Catholic people because many of those Catholic people are still God's people. So always make sure you understand that. I am not saying all Roman Catholic people are lost or anything like that. I believe there's actually going to be more former Catholics in heaven than former anything else. Because there's been more Catholics for more years than anything else. There's going to be some former Baptists, some former Catholics, some former Pentecostals, some former Adventists, some former lots of things. Notice I call them all former. Because in heaven we're simply going to be God's kids and the barriers have been broken down. And I'm really looking forward to that day. But back to where we were, the Catholic papal system claims that it can forgive sin. Notice, Michael Mueller's book, The Catholic Priest, seek where you will through heaven and earth, and you will find but one created being who can forgive the sinner, who can free him from the chains of hell. That extraordinary being is the priest, the Catholic priest. Yes, beloved brethren, the priest raises his hand, he pronounces the word of absolution, and an instant, quick as a flash of light, the chains of hell are burst asunder, and the sinner becomes a child of God. So great is the power of the priest that the judgments of heaven itself are subject to his decision. Did you catch that? The priest can tell God who to forgive and who not to forgive. They said they're king of heaven, earth, and the lower regions. That's blasphemy. To believe you can tell God who to forgive and who not to forgive. Continuing in Daniel 11:38. But in their place he shall honor a God of fortresses, and a God which his fathers did not know he shall honor with gold and silver. The papacy comes in and they start building these huge fortress-like sanctuaries, and they put into these things images especially of a woman, Mary, with all kinds of gold and silver. It's a God that was not known in early Christianity. Early Christians did not worship Mary, but they bring Mary in as a god. And you ask her, you pray to her, and they honor her with precious stones and pleasant things. Thus he shall act against the strongest fortresses with a foreign god, which he shall acknowledge and advance its glory, and he shall cause them to rule over many and divide the land for gain. Not only does he bring in counterfeit gods that weren't there in the scripture, how is Mary a foreign god? Well, you have Ishtar and others. Mary, they bring Ishtar in and just put the name Mary over it for the culture and traditions. And the papacy does divide the land for gain. He starts telling in the Roman Empire, Holy Roman Empire, who can be kings and who can be rulers. And he controls things in that way. Now we get to the time of the end. But a little recap here of what we just covered. We obviously now have the papacy, as they are now not just attacking the land. In this third conflict, the focus is moving more to how they're attacking God's people. And what we're going to find out in the third conflict, when he attacks the king of the south, he's going to conquer the king of the south, and this time he's not going to come home, he's going to attack God's people globally. So what we have is the global dimension from verse 31 and following truly being added on. Before verse 31, it was largely the place. Now we have a global dimension. The places are still in play, but it's especially talking about the globalized people. And we're going to notice that in every country being mentioned at the time of the end, there is a globalized people that matches. The place and the people are working together from verses 31 and following. Well, let's read what it says in Daniel 11, verse 40. At the time of the end, the king of the south shall attack him, and the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind, with chariots, horsemen, and many ships. He shall enter the countries, overwhelm them, and pass through. He shall also enter the glorious land, and many countries shall be overthrown. But these shall escape from his hand: Edom, Moab, and the prominent people of Ammon. He shall stretch out his hand against the countries, and the land of Egypt shall not escape. He shall have power over the treasures of gold and silver, and over all the precious things of Egypt. Also the Libyans and Ethiopians shall follow at his heels. I want you to notice a couple of things here. Number one, the king of the south pushes first in all three conflicts. Islam hits Jerusalem first, and they're spread out of Saudi Arabia. Then the papacy strikes back. Then the Turks come in, they push up into Europe, and the papacy strikes back. At the time of the end, the king of the south will push again. And the word is gore. Like a bull pushes you with his horns and gores you. That is not a painless injury. That would be exceedingly painful and messy. And so I'm expecting the time of the end conflict to be very, very painful and messy in the world. But you have the king of the north push back and overthrow the king of the south. Now, when the king of the south goes down, I want you to notice that it mentioned Egypt, Libya, Ethiopia, Edom, Moab, and Ammon. That's Western Jordan. So here's the question. What do Egypt, Libya, Ethiopia, Western Jordan have in common? Some people want to say that's atheism. No, those aren't atheists. Those are Muslims. In Daniel 11, on the very face of it, we're looking at the king of the north overthrowing Islam. Because the king of the south, Egypt, Libya, Ethiopia, Jordan. That's the Muslim world. So, context is clearly describing this. Now, there are some definitions that I would like you to remember. Number one, the papacy is ruled by a pope who claims global political and religious power, church and state union. A caliphate is ruled by a caliph who claims global geopolitical and global religious power, church and state, or church and mosque, or mosque and state. Notice both of these are very similar. They both want global political and religious power. So, you don't have room on the same planet for both of these guys if they both want to rule the world. And I've noticed something as I look at the history along with this prophecy. Every time we have a functioning caliphate, we end up with a holy war. Oh, my definition of a holy war is when both sides act like the devil in the name of God. And if you're acting like the devil, you are not of God, and that matches the history. But you had Arab caliphates, you got the Holy War of the Crusades. You had Ottoman caliphates, Turkish caliphates. You get the Holy League during the Battle of Lepanto. And at the time of the end, you have another caliphate come up. You have a king of the south again. And there's a third and final round. Not going to get into it quite yet, but I will show you how that is already in fulfillment shortly. But right now, we're going to be putting the players together so you understand what's going on in the world around you. So the Islamists are the radical Muslims who want to bring about a global caliphate by force. They want to establish their global capital in the city they call Al-Quds. The rest of the world knows it as Jerusalem. Oh, whoa, just a minute. Let's look at this. If all the radical Muslims in the world want to make Jerusalem their global capital, do you think Daniel 11 could be right that Jerusalem gets caught in the middle? Yeah, that's a no-brainer now. And why people have a hard time understanding the role of Islam in prophecy, I don't know, because it's total sense. Who are the radical Muslims? They include the Muslim Brotherhood. Oh, where does the Muslim Brotherhood come from? 1920s in Egypt. All radical Islam in today's world springs out of the Muslim Brotherhood. And Daniel 11 says Egypt goes down. There's a place, Egypt, but there's also a global people, radical Islam. Huh. And out of the Brotherhood, we get Al-Qaeda, we get the Islamic State, we have Erdogan in Turkey, he wants to be the Caliph in Jerusalem, we have Iran, and we have others. They're all the Caliph wannabes. Who are the moderate Muslims? These are those who are opposed to a caliphate by force in Jerusalem. They include Saudi Arabia and those who have signed on to the Abrahamic Accords with Israel, United Arab Emirates, Sudan, Bahrain, Morocco, Oman. Whoa, let's see. It said in Daniel 11 that Ethiopia and Libya would follow the king of the north. Sudan is part of ancient Ethiopia. Morocco is part of ancient Libya. We've already got parts of those areas joining in with the king of the north forces for the Abrahamic Accords. Daniel 11 is in the process of fulfillment all around us. Oh, Edom, Moab, and Ammon. We'll get into it a little bit more later, but you have the land of Israel, and right beside it you have Jordan. Physically, on the map, they're side by side. But we're going to find that you have God has a global people of Israel, and you have some Muslims that join in side by side with it. The place and the people works on every place name in Daniel 11, 40 to 45. Remember, place and the people, it's now focusing on people from Daniel 11, 31 and following. And that's the section Jesus uses to focus on the people. So this is very solid ground that we're walking on. Now, let's take a quick look. Those three ways of division, Edom, Moab, and Ammon, they escape. We're going to come back to them later because they're the really, really good news. But they're going to escape by trusting Jesus in the Bible. The second part is overthrown, Egypt and many countries. That's the radical Muslims, but Egypt as a country will be overthrown as well. And number three, those who follow, Libya and Ethiopia. In Revelation, you have a parallel, and all the world marveled and followed the beast. I was talking to an editor of a world magazine on religious liberty. His name is Lincoln Steed. And we were talking in a restaurant, and he said, "Tim, you will never convince me that the papacy, the king of the north, overthrows radical Islam. Just not going to happen." We talked about it for a while. And by the way, Lincoln and I just love to argue with each other. It's a lot of fun with each other. We don't agree always, but we do like each other in some ways. So we finished that on something else. We're walking out of the restaurant, and there was a car between us. And I looked over the roof. I said, "Hey, Lincoln, do you believe that all the world will follow the beast someday?" He says, "Of course I do. It says so in Revelation 13:3. I said, "Where's radical Islam?" He stopped. And he looked at me. He said, "Tim, have you ever been on my television program?" I said, "Nope." He says, "I'll be in touch." Soon we did 6 half-hour series, 6-part, half-hour each one, on Daniel 11. He realized There can't be a radical Islam on the planet if all the world follows the beast. Daniel 11 explains how we get there. A lot of people have been focusing on the end of the story, and they don't see what's happening right now. It leaves them flying blind now, and that's dangerous. You can be easily deceived with the political winds that are blowing all around us right now if you don't understand what's going on now from Bible prophecy. So Egypt, yep, it's right up there. These are the ancient borders, and it's going to radicalize, but there's a global people who radicalize as well. Libya and Ethiopia, that's all that whole section of northern Africa except for Egypt, and they represent those who are going to go along with the king of the north. Now, we have 3 conflicts. And Arab Islam and the Crusades, Ottoman Islam, the second conflict, and then the time of the end. Now, where is the time of the end? Well, there are a variety of verses that will point out that it is somewhere in the 1798 to the mid-1840s. I want you to take a look at this chart and notice that in 1798 the papacy goes down, 1840 Islam goes down, so that's the end of the second conflict. So the time of the end will be somewhere at least fully after 1840. And you're going to have a third conflict. Now, here's a question. Who are the allies going to be of the king of the north and the king of the south in this final conflict? Well, Daniel never tells us, but if I look at history, in the Crusades and in the Ottoman Empire, both sides were making alliances. They were there, but they weren't in Daniel. Since the third conflict is at the time of the end and it ends with God setting up his kingdom, we can't wait for history to know who the allies are and the alliances. We've got to know that now as we go into this third conflict, and we're already in it, I believe. Good news is Revelation explains it to us. And as we go into this, I just want to make sure you understand something. Because it's political dynamite that we're about to be looking at. No political party saves you, only Jesus saves you. No politician saves you, only Jesus saves you. No church or culture saves you, only Jesus saves you. And I don't care what church you come from, my question is the same. Did your church ever die for your sins? Is your church coming back to bring an end to pain and suffering on this world? Nope, that's only Jesus. So we need to keep our eyes focused on Jesus Christ. But God's people do get caught in the middle. That's what we can know for certain. And as we move forward into the next presentation, we are going to be looking at who the alliances are of the King of the North and the King of the South. And when you understand this, you will now understand the world that you live in. And it will keep you from following earthly politicians as your Savior, and keep you focused on Jesus Christ as your Savior instead.